I've been going to Catholic school for quite some time, ever since I was in kindergarten. And in Catholic school, we always have a uniform. For girls, it's the cute plaid jumper and skirt. But I was never the type to wear the uniform jumper or the skirt. Instead, I always gravitated towards the khaki shorts, the cotton twill pants, with a simple polo and a sweatshirt. Outside of school, I always wore big boxy shirts, hoodies, shorts, and some sweats. I never liked any clothing that was too close to my body or too tight. It was something that I was uncomfortable with. Eventually, the label tomboy always followed me around. Family and friends would talk about the way that I dress and how being a tomboy was just a part of my personality. But at such a young age, I never understood why there was a need to label the way that I dress. Why couldn't I dress just for myself? Now, getting into my freshman year of high school, I was more self-conscious about my appearance and how I looked. I compared myself to all the other girls. They were more feminine than I was. They dressed nicer than me, they wore makeup. So I felt out of place. I felt the need to overcompensate and fit into the standards that society has created. I tried to squeeze into those borders of expectations. So I did it all. I wore the skirts, I wore dresses, I did my makeup every single day. Yet I still wasn't confident and I wasn't comfortable. That person on that screen was not true to my gender identity. But I did it, and I kept telling myself that being uncomfortable was just a part of it, that I had to be this image to be a woman. So I changed the way that I presented myself to fit the norm. These gender norms are also called gender stereotypes. A gender stereotype is defined as a generalized view or preconception about attributes or characteristics, or the roles that are or ought to be possessed by or performed by women and men. See, now gender stereotypes start at a very early age, even before we were born. We throw these stereotypical gender reveal parties, baby showers, and now I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those parties, right? But we already start to associate the pink and blue colors with a certain gender. We label our children as a ladies' man or a princess. And the issue with these labels is that we already start to create this type of personality for the child, labeling boys as masculine and dominant, and girls as soft and sensitive. Gender stereotypes limit the capacity to develop personal abilities and our identity. We see these gender stereotypes affect our mindset on occupations, personality traits, and physical presence. Now, for occupations, we subconsciously assume and group certain jobs to a particular gender because we use gender as a way to measure a person's capability. We'll typically assume that teachers and nurses are women, and engineers and mechanics are men. Gender stereotypes even exist in the workplace and create a sort of toxic environment. So let's take engineering for an example. As we know, it's a very male-dominated field. Only 13% of the workforce are women. And although there has been change made as far as the curriculum, and it caters more towards women now, there's more representation of women in STEM. But a large portion of the women who do graduate with an engineering degree never actually go into that profession or quit because of a toxic work environment. In internships or the workplace, women are usually given admin-type tasks, and men get tasks beneficial to their analytical skills. The overall environment for a woman consisted of overly simple tasks, sexual harassment even, a lack of supportive networking and mentorship. And That workplace is created from the gender stereotype that women are weaker, not as initiative, less capable than men. And we subconsciously make a work environment like that. It limits a woman's opportunities. When it comes to personality traits and mannerisms, women are often expected to be emotional and accommodating. Men are often expected to be self-confident and more aggressive. And women being known to be emotional, right? When we express emotions or any type of distress, we're either not believed or just told we're over-exaggerating, being too dramatic. And this is really invalidating to our feelings and experiences. Other times, when women are more dominant, self-confident, they're seen as bitchy or having an attitude. On the contrary, men are labeled as confident, aggressive, dominant. And that's because at such an early age, we tell boys to just toughen up. Repress those emotions. Do not show any type of vulnerability. And when men do express any type of emotions, they're labeled as weak and sensitive. Society has this push on masculinity that causes men to almost bottle up their emotions and sometimes seek an emotional outlet elsewhere. That can be in dangerous activities or bad habits or anything that fits that masculine stereotype. So, I was at Target the other day, no intention at all, just browsing, as one does in a Target, and I walk into the skincare section, and I noticed these Biore strips. And there's a normal box of Biore strips with a woman pictured on the front. And right next to that was a box with a man pictured on the front. Same product, right? But the one with the man is labeled men's skincare. I thought, okay, so maybe there's a difference. I'll give Biore the benefit of the doubt. But I was reading the box a little bit more. They had the same purpose. For oily skin, for your pores. Thought, okay, maybe a different formula, right? So I turned the back of the box, and they have the same exact ingredients, the same exact formula, same direction, same size, same shape, and even the same price. The only difference was that the one pictured a man using the product, and that one was labeled men's skincare. So society puts so much emphasis on the roughness of masculinity that something as necessary as skincare is almost shameful for men. Gender stereotypes also make expectations about our physical presence, how we present ourselves. We are expected to dress, walk, talk, even sit in a certain way stereotypical to our gender. As a woman, we were always taught to sit ladylike. Sit up straight in your seat, cross your legs, knees always touching. While men aren't held to that same expectation. They can slouch, be in a relaxed posture, and even manspreading, and for that to be completely acceptable for men. But when a woman does it, it's unladylike. It is also deemed more feminine to have a higher pitched voice, and more masculine to have a lower tone, talking more casually and with slang. These types of expectations cause this need for us to overcompensate and try to fit into these borders of expectations. It's almost like trying to fit into a shirt that doesn't fit. We know it's not for us. We know it doesn't work for us. But society tells us that we look good in that stereotype. We look good in that shirt, so we make it fit either way. We overcompensate to fit the gender norm, so we feel less self-conscious about how we are perceived. Because a lot of the time, it's believed that the more initiative or muscular a woman is, the more masculine presenting she is, she's a lesbian. And the more sensitive or feminine or thinner than a man is, he's assumed to be gay. Your sexuality, something like your sexuality, was assumed based on a simple piece of clothing, just because it was associated with a certain gender. I like using crop tops as an example for this. Usually we see women wearing crop tops. But what if I told you that in the 80s and 90s, it originated from masculinity, it originated from American football. But eventually it became unmanly to share a space of expression, this common interest of crop tops with women, and there was a need to distinguish a difference between masculinity and femininity. So we have celebrities like Jaden Smith and Harry Styles, who are comfortable enough in their own form of masculinity to wear gender non-conforming clothes. So what they've done is they've broadened their horizon, they've broadened their definition of what masculinity is to them. They've tailored their own shirts to fit them. Despite this, them being confident and comfortable in their form of masculinity, there's still backlash from media that invalidate their form. But that's exactly it, is that they are an example. They set an example and not an expectation of how gender identity looks different for everybody. So, how do we break down gender stereotypes? How do we build up confidence in our own gender identity? So, I thought the same way that the stereotypes began, right? At an early age. Breaking our children away from the gender norms at an early age, it prevents them from subconsciously making decisions based on gendered expectations. And the best way to break away from a gender stereotype is allowing your children to make their own decisions. For example, my parents, they always gave me the ability to make my own decisions. They gave me options. In the past, when toys at fast food places used to be labeled for boys or girls, my parents always gave me the option to choose. The cashier would ask what toy I wanted, boy or girl toy. And my parents never answered for me. They always turned around to me in the back seat and repeated the question to me. Boy toy, I said without hesitation. Giving your child the power to choose is the best thing you can do as a parent. It gives them a sense of freedom to not be tied down to gender stereotype things. It doesn't limit their options or restrict them from thinking that they can't do something or that they're not capable of doing something that is typically categorized under a certain gender. Okay, but looking past children, right? Even in the adult setting, there's still a lot of room to learn about breaking down these stereotypes. For one, creating a healthier work environment, distributing tasks based on merit and skill level rather than gender. We should be given the same opportunities to grow and improve ourselves despite stereotypes. Call out these gender biases when you hear them. Don't judge others for not conforming within their gendered expectations. When we stop focusing so much on matching gendered expectations, we create a more gender-inclusive and safe space. A space where we are no longer constrained by the pink and blue toy aisles. We are no longer constrained by the hobbies, interests, and occupations that we are presumed to have. We can gain the confidence to freely express ourselves and live in a way that is true and ideal to us. Because there is not one definition for masculinity, and there is not one definition for femininity. And especially for yourself, do not let anyone set the expectations for you. Thank you.